Hey, I am so happy to be joining you guys all, at least from afar. My name's Dr. Bobby Legg, and we're going to be talking today about mental health and online activities. That can be social media, video games, age-appropriate news consumption, specifically for the kids and youth we work with. So I got interested in this subject following the millennium after I realized, I'm a child and adolescent psychotherapist, how much online engagement was shaping the kids I work with. And an interesting thing for our modern era is historically, we have always been taught by our parents and grandparents about life. We've been taught about how to cook, how to do finances, how to manage relationships, friendships, broken hearts, that you always had elders to give some advice, and they could understand, even if there was a generation gap, they could understand some. What happened with the information age is having such a new experience of online connecting meant that everybody was really in it together, and that elders could really struggle with trying to understand what the youth were going to, because it was all so new. So I started observation, and then I was able to start doing research through multiple ethnic groups on what was it like for teenagers online. Interesting, when I started talking about this researching and connecting with others, is I realized it was really hard for a lot of adults to talk about, that it was confusing and they didn't know what to do and felt overwhelmed. So today we're going to try to break through some of those things to see how we can all support the youth we care about. Several things is kind of my approach. One, I'm very reality-based. We can limit online access, we can focus things, but there is so much through education and jobs that is part of a digital age. So how do we work with it? I use a biopsychosocial model, which means I care about the brain and how this affects a child or a teenager's brain and how they function. That's the bio part. The psycho is the psychology, the thoughts, the feelings. How does this affect someone's internal world when they're online gaming or connecting? And social, how does it shape our societies, friendships, family relationships, community relationships, because it is all so connected. And everything will always be from a strengths-based approach, realizing our youth and each of us have more strength and abilities and opportunity than we ever can limit or imagine. So when we think of youth online, frequently you can hear anyone who was born after internet was developed and more readily accessible. Sometimes you'll hear them called as digital natives. And that's true. They've known it as part of their life. Another option, though, is to think, are they digital guinea pigs? And the truth is, older generations have never done this before. We don't have great information on how does this affect socialization? How does this affect mood, depression? How does it affect attention spans? And so everyone is new, and young people are very quick on electronics and digital media. However, do we also wonder if they're just the first ones in a large experiment of how it affects individuals and society? So today we're going to look at several things. We're going to look at social media, how it affects self-identity, how what you put on social media, how does it shape how you feel about yourself? Also, how does it affect how you communicate with others, how people receive you? We're going to look at online gaming, and with that, video fixation. So when does a game online become a fixation that might have some compulsion and repetitive nature? Especially for those of us that work with a diverse population, especially youth with anywhere on autism spectrum can be especially vulnerable to that strong fixation on gaming. Also looking at social communication, online gaming is far more of a community than just an activity for many. We're going to look at how people take in information. A huge amount of youth get a large amount of their information through TikTok Reels. That could also be Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, WhatsApp Reels. But Reels are interesting that they're both very brief, and they tend to have a strong algorithm that chooses what you see, not you choosing what you see. But we want to look at all of these three things. And I'm going to start with kind of helping us think through, how are they behaviorally reinforced? So when you post something online, how do you feel afterwards? How do other people respond to it? And how does your mood affect it? Same with gaming, when you make a new level, when you connect with someone online, or when you see funny videos on YouTube, how does that affect your mood? And how does that affect what you do next? So we're going to start by zooming in on the reward center of the brain. And what this is a pathway in your brain that releases dopamine. Dopamine is a natural chemical in your brain. It's a neurotransmitter, and it is released when we have something good happen. And it can be eating your favorite food. It can be winning a special prize. And it then gives a dopamine burst. And what we then feel is something that feels like happiness, pleasure, positive, a positive experience. This pathway, so it's several parts of the brain that light up when you have something fun happen, something enjoyable, is it starts fairly low in the brain, which just means it's more of some of our basic life survival stuff. Because if you think about it, even for us to survive as a species, it was really smart that we had a dopamine burst for food, because it made us be like, oh yes, I like food. I need to keep hunting, gathering, getting food, so I live. So it comes through from the base of the brain area through the middle part of the brain, which has memory and emotions as part of it. That's really important, because both memory and emotions is strong when we look at what motivates a behavior. And then it connects throughout this wider part of the brain, which mostly is about sensory intake. So that's why even if you have something positive happen online, like, oh, wow, I just got a ton of likes on something I shared, or so many birthday messages. It lights up, almost, you feel a sense of excitement that is actually almost physical, because it connects to this wider part of the brain. All right, so a few things about behavioral reinforcement, which many of you may know from education. Unpredictable rewards give a stronger dose of dopamine. So that's why if I know my coworkers always give me a birthday cake on my birthday, and we go to the meeting and I have it, I'm happy. But, right, that would be dopamine. I feel love, I feel excitement. However, if my entire community throws me a huge surprise party I had no idea of, and all jumps out, and they did all of this work, whoosh, I'm going to have so much dopamine, because it's unpredicted, right? Then when we have an unpredictable burst, our brain gets a little greedy. It wants more. So that's how gambling works. That, oh, I pulled a slot machine, or I did a video gamble, and I got a reward, even if it was a small amount of money. You then go, oh, well, maybe more, right? Maybe that could happen to me again. Maybe I could get lucky again. It is interesting to know this is the same neural pathway that is used during illicit drug use. Now, in drug use, methamphetamines, cocaine, something, it literally is a chemical coming in from the outside and lighting up that pathway. So it is far more horrible, horrendous, and addicting. But it is the same pathway. This one is just the natural, it's the natural pathway without an external force. So when we are on social media, we'll start there, is you share something or have a response that has positive, positive reactions from peers. It activates your reward system. You then have an increase in dopamine and you feel good, right? And so then what do? I'd like to post again. Or that was really great. All of the programs, Instagram, Facebook, use specifically a variable reward schedule in choosing what to notify you about. It means that it's never quite predictable, which makes our brain more interested in it. I think this is fascinating. Social media mimics human connection, prompting dopamine release when we get likes and comments. So just like if I was at school and my peers gave me really positive feedback in front of my class, I'd feel happy. I'd have a dopamine burst. Even though this is through a small electronic device, it mimics human connection and shapes behavior in that way. So simple brain studies, we know that when you get more likes on a social media post, it's similar to eating chocolate or winning money of how your brain responds. I think a huge one to realize is social media gives immediate rewards with little effort. It doesn't take too much for me to post a picture. It doesn't take too much for me to even do a game or something, but I get a pretty good dopamine hit, right? I can also get dopamine from cleaning my room, organizing my work material for the next week, and feeling in control, checking off things from a to-do list. But that requires more work. You do get it, but it requires more work. You can get good dopamine from playing a game of football and really mastering your skills, and then shooting and, scoring some great goals. That gives a great dopamine burst, but it requires more work. Social media is a little bit dangerous that it's very easy for little effort to get a positive thing. Interesting socialization patterns. There was recently studies where they showed 2 photos to teenagers saying, oh, this was posted on social media. Do you like it? And under one photo, they put a ton of likes. And on the same photo, they put a small amount of likes. Teens who saw a lot of people liked it were like, yes, that's so cool. I like it. Teens that saw the exact same picture with a small amount of likes were like, meh, not that impressive. Which again just shows the role of groupthink and influence with teens. It also shows how quickly teens can feel a sense of friends or friendship online. This, for many of us who are working with teens who may have struggled with social acceptance growing up, can be a little alluring that they can feel a sense of friendship quickly online, where in real life, when they go to school, church, community, they may not be well accepted by their peers. And this gives a quick alternative. So again, the same thing, you post on social media, you wait, you post or comment, you wait for the reaction, and then you get a reward, which is a physical, response of a like or comment. That leads us always urging for a little bit more. Random one, if we want to start thinking about how does this affect our brain and socialization? I think it's peculiar, but we get, all of us, a greater dopamine rush, feel good, when we're talking about ourselves. In face-to-face conversations, if you and I were face-to-face and we were talking, each of us would probably have 30 to 40% of the conversation about ourselves. I'd talk about myself, you'd talk about yourself, and then we'd also talk about other things that were outside of us. However, if we were online, in online activity, 80% of our conversation is about ourselves. Right? I guess it's almost like a little bit of an echo chamber that we're talking into. And then the brain kind of rewards us for talking about ourselves. We get more dopamine, we feel good. I posted this is how I am, this and that. And to realize that has this natural feel good effect. And random thing I'm just throwing in there is something that just never existed before, is most people will talk about phantom vibration syndrome. That sounds very strong, but when you felt or thought your phone was buzzing and it wasn't, what it is just we have all become accustomed to having an electronic device near us, that when we hear something or feel something, so in this case, just a natural itch on your skin, which we normally would not pay attention to, our brain quickly assumes it must be your phone buzzing. So it does show just how much our pathway of response is being shaped by our interaction with devices. I'm going to keep running really fast so I can try to get everything in. Video games. So let's look at video games. Our brain loves rewards and our brain loves novelty, especially teenagers. Teenagers need excitement and novelty at a greater level than adults do. Video games bring exciting graphics, music, story, which just lights up the brain, especially for teenagers. Video games are quick to learn and give a clear sense of mastery, right? Like, oh, I needed to do this. I learned how to kill that monster and I upped my level. In real life, learning things is harder, right? If I want to learn to play the piano, if I want to learn to do algebra, it's difficult. And I may not get that sense of accomplishment as quickly, but video games are a little quicker and they're made to give quick rewards. It's easy to restart. When I mess up, I just hit restart. Don't you wish life was that easy? You could just hit restart when it wasn't, when you weren't so proud of something you just did. So it makes it kind of simpler. Video games give a quick sense of accomplishment. It's verified by online rewards, levels, stars, energy on the game. And what most of you may be aware of is now most adult learning. So for human resources, if you have learning, those things have levels, stars, and advancements for me to just complete my corporate requirements. Similarly, if you use things like Duolingo or a language app, notice they make up things like levels and rewards, and it works. I was literally with 2 colleagues last night, and they both were like, oh, I must get on Duolingo. I don't want to lose my place in stratosphere in learning my Swahili. And you're like, wow. Okay, it works for adults. Video games can give a sense of empowerment, specifically in relation to others. You're frequently playing against the computer as your competitive or against peers. And then it is reinforced through, this sounds odd, but restriction. And that's like sometimes they won't. Candy Crush, which is a fairly simple phone game, only gives you so many lives per day, so that you're then frustrated and like, I want to try again. And you won't be able to try again till tomorrow. Wordle is a very popular online game right now, and you only have 1 per day. And people like it that way because it gives you the sense of waiting, like when can I get the next one? Variable or intermittent reinforcement is very common in video games. That's when like the surprise package or the power energy ball only comes up so often. And if you get it, then like you get to advance. So it gives an extra big dopamine rush of, wow, I got this and I won't get it again. And then it's also can be scheduled. Like, I know if I work this much, I'll get to the next level. So they take that reinforcement schedule. All of you guys who are trained in ABA can recognize that this is just entrenched into a game, and it's powerful. A compulsion loop is a description of some of the way this reward system works. So Fortnite is a very popular online game. It has things where you buy skins or other tools. You must frequently wait to buy them, whether you have to earn them or wait for a certain date for them to be released. That builds anticipation. That anticipation itself is dopamine. It's like, even if I know I'm going on vacation and I start thinking about it, I get excited. That's that dopamine coming out, even though I haven't left on vacation. So it starts with the anticipation, and then you get this new gear, the new skin, the new, tool, and then you have a challenge. You need to try to use it to get to the next level, and it works. You get some progress, then you get a reward, a gold, gold, loot, next level. And again, it keeps you going stronger and stronger. Now jumping to information consumption. This is kind of TikTok reels, Instagram reels. These algorithms follow what is watched by the viewer very carefully. It tracks your interest and detects some things that I think are interesting. I knew it would detect my interest or music. It also detects your mental health. Do you like more positive stuff, more sad stuff? It detects your sense of humor and what you find funny versus someone else. It tracks your sexual orientation, not by what you claim, but by whether you think young boy band members are more interesting to watch. And again, thinking even romance, even if it's very clean, but just the idea of romance hits that dopamine going, because it's one of the, it's a primitive thing to keep society going, is to have love and excitement. So on many of these reels, the videos are passively chosen, meaning it just keeps going to the next one. The viewer can both anticipate, oh, maybe the next one's going to have this, and then be rewarded with, oh, I love cute kitten videos. It makes me happy. Those intermittent bursts are what make you keep scrolling. And that's why almost all of us have been next to someone and you're like, oh, what are you doing? And then you realize, and they'll be like, oh, I'm just scrolling, just kind of going through. And you'll be like, kind of why? And they're like, oh, I don't know. But it's because you're kind of waiting for the next thing to grab their attention or give them a little feel-good dopamine burst. The reward system of our brain loves novelty. If we all stayed in our homes with no outside influence, most of us get bored, upset, a little depressed, right? We, and especially teenagers, love novelty. If they go out to a new place to eat dinner, a new place to hang out with friends, they are so thrilled. The reels on these online providers change quickly. That keeps the brain looking at something new, which holds on to teenage attention longer. When we try to say like, oh, what could be the outcomes of this big change in how we take in information? One thing we know is certainly in the past 10 years, but even each year of that 10-year block, mainstream news articles around the world have been reduced in length. News stories, the way we learn, is shorter and shorter and shorter, because it seems to be that's what humans want more, is shorter information, more concise, more brief, which certainly could hurt our attention spans and hurt our ability to take in larger information. All right, so that's kind of some of the ways it's affecting our brain. We can start thinking about how that affects our mood. And then we can start thinking, how does this affect our socialization? How kids get along with each other, how they interact with family members. So I want to start asking the questions. How do we use dopamine, this naturally occurring chemical that's set off by good, fun, pleasurable things? How do we use that behavioral response for good? How do we help youth and teens develop a positive self-identity? And how do we develop healthy interpersonal relationships? Self-identity involves individuation, separate from your parents, but things that help make you proud of who you are. It helps show you your personal strengths and helps you know your own personal interest. And with that, then you can feel more connected to peers. Other things online. So all of those self-identity can be done offline or online. Same things for growing up, especially for, I'd say tweens, and even a little younger, age 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, the ability to create something, to learn something, to do a new skill, to have rewards for completing a skill, to feel mastery, and including in comparison to the other kids around you. All of you in education are like, whew, we do that all the time, right? So how do we keep making these needs be met, that kids can have good self-understanding, good self-acceptance, and good self-confidence? Developmental tasks, specifically for teens. Socialization is huge. Their brains are wired for it. How can they have a positive, separate identity from parents? I think this is especially important if there have been any circumstances due to physical health, learning differences, emotional or social patterns that made a child be more dependent on a parent, whether it was for care, for socialization. As an adolescent, it is very important that they can start having their own identity, that they can start feeling a connection to peers, and that they can have a sense of belonging in a peer group. And all of our research online also shows a huge one for adolescents with each other is feeling a connection on issues of love. And that can be passions for career, passions for learning, certainly romantic interest, favorite hobbies, and loss of death of loved ones, loss of friendship, because it's just a lot for them to take in at this age, and they really care about connecting on it. So just to wrap up, we want to think through, and I want you to know there's amazing possibilities. How do we use dopamine for good? So we want to remember dopamine is part of our brain, and it was built to cue human survival, to make sure we eat, we have families. Those things are very pleasurable activities for us, and it keeps us doing them. Dopamine happens for positive behavior, and that can be learning a new skill in school. It can be learning a new dance move. It can be taking care of a task that's been a burden to you. So we have that ability completely offline to help build positive, experiences and rewards. For online, there is really important limit setting, right? So that a child or a teen does not become engrossed at a level that overtakes their ability to think or engage in offline activities. One of the best things we can do, because like I said, online creates this fast, quick dopamine rush that doesn't require much work. The rest of life requires a little bit more work. So one of the things we want to do is, how do we do gratitude in savoring good things in life that happen during live interpersonal activities? So that is, if I just played football, how do I help the child reflect on, wow, how'd you feel? How did it feel when you make that goal? How did it feel doing the passing with your best friend to do good teamwork? Savoring is a mindfulness activity that helps. When you remember that positive activity, it relights up that reward circuit and you get more dopamine in a way that can help you realize, wow, that was really good. Or I'm sitting outside and the weather is perfect and I'm reading my favorite book. This feels great. Having awareness triggers your brain to be like, oh yes, this is good. We want to have mindfulness for natural, healthy levels of dopamine. That means daily activities, to have an awareness that your food, that walking to school, that having your school uniform look good is positive. That awareness helps give us a positive both dopamine level and serotonin, which is another feel-good chemical, but a little bit more steady and long-term. And then lastly, a healthy use of novelty in life. So think, if you kids have gone to school all week, things like, have popcorn or ice cream on a Friday night, or do a special fun Friday activity going somewhere in your town or village. Giving those positive things that are live, three-dimensional in real life activities, and having positive engagement awareness really supports that. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I look forward to certainly having online discussion or dialogue. Feel free to reach out to me with anything. And boy, I have so much gratitude for the work you are doing. Thank you. Your work is